Hello everyone and welcome. I think we're up and running. It looks like everything's working fine to me on this side. YouTube is telling me that video is working all right, so hopefully we're all working all right. If you can hear me all right and if you can see me all right, if you could just pop a quick note in the chat to let me know. That'll help me, and then I'll know that everything's working all right for most people. I'm just going to put a quick message in there now. Thanks, Kay. That's great. Good to know we're all up and running. All right. I think we're ready to go. Okay, so welcome to the first Live Threads workshop. And for this one, I've chosen the subject for this workshop. I'm going to paint from start to finish a painting which I'm going to auction on the site. And I'm going to take you through the entire process from just starting the painting today through to finishing it, setting up the auction, hopefully selling it, packaging it up, and then sending it out to whoever wins the auction. Now, obviously, all of that isn't going to happen today because apart from anything else, my paintings take me more than a day usually. But the subject that I've got today, if you have a look underneath on the web page there, if you have a look underneath the video, like down there, there's a link to a photo. And that's the subject that I'm painting today. And the reason I've given you that is so that you can see what I'm painting from my point of view. Because when I switch to the camera that's on the easel here, obviously I can't have the camera showing you exactly what I see there at the same time as showing you the panel. Otherwise the camera would be in front of me and I wouldn't be able to do any painting. Unfortunately, there's not really any way around that one. Just a second, just let me check the chat. Great stuff. Like it's all working all right for everyone. Good. We'll steam on. The subject I've chosen today is one that it's really meaningful to me, and I think it's important that when you do a painting that you choose something that's meaningful to you. So for me, it's a beautiful day today. We're very lucky with the light. The light is really good and it looks like it's going to stay the same for the next hour or two, which is probably how long I will be painting for. There's no need, by the way, for you to stay for the whole of the stream if you've got stuff to do, because obviously it's all going to be recorded. You'll be able to watch it later. But it's spring here. We're only really 3/4 of the way through February. We had a couple of snowfalls and it feels really spring-like, and the spring flowers are actually coming out. We've got one daffodil in the garden which I didn't have the heart to pick because it's the first one of the year, but in this area around here, the Cotswolds, we have these little yellow primroses that come through every spring, and they've only just started coming out now. In a couple of weeks they'll just festoon this area. They'll be all over the place. And also the snowdrops have been out for about a fortnight now and they're just coming to the end. So there's a few snowdrops left. So I've chosen some spring flowers for today because one, I like to paint flowers. Two, I got them from the garden, from our garden here. And I've decided that this year I want to take all of this countryside around me as my subject. I don't mean necessarily plein air painting, although I will be doing some of that. But instead of going, if I want to paint some flowers, instead of going to a flower shop and getting maybe some roses or something like that, which I know they go down well and I know they sell well, I'm going to choose the subjects from what I can find around me as much as possible. Probably not always, but as much as possible. So I want to reflect this area that I live in now, this beautiful place, and I'm hoping that through that I will manage to bring myself kind of closer to the nature that's around me, because that's a lot of the reason that we came out here, is to be closer to nature, So you can expect to see a lot more of that from me this year. Plein air paintings and small pieces of nature like flowers, but maybe just random stuff that I find brought in and then painted in the studio too. What I'll cover today, because I've got flowers and because they're very delicate flowers, by tomorrow they will probably have gone. The snowdrops for sure. So I need to get on pretty quick with this painting, and I need to get the overall value balance in, and I need to get things drawn out how I want them drawn out, but then I need to start painting the flowers fast. I mean, really, I need to get them as much as I can done today. I will be able to use the photo, since I've got one, afterwards if I really need to for some detail, but in practice I never do that. But we'll see how we go. Anything else I need to tell you before we start? Just quickly, any questions that you've got? If you've been on one of my live streams before, you know how this worked. Even more the case now for Threads. Any questions you've got as we go along, just pop them in the chat. I'll be checking the chat, and I'll answer them as we go along. What will probably happen is that I'll get involved in the painting, and then so there might be a bit of a delay before I remember to check the chat and see. Anything that I don't catch while we're live on the stream, I will catch later. So there's going to be follow-ups on this. I'm going to record the whole process of painting this painting. Maybe there'll be another session, maybe 2 more sessions after this one. So that will all end up in your Threads videos as well. And then I'm also going to, I'll find a way to do this. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do it. I might write it up as if it was a blog post, but it will just be available to you inside Threads. Or I might record another video, probably record another video showing me actually how I set up the auction, and how I write what I want to say about the painting, and also how I let everybody know that this painting is finished and it's up for auction. I'm going to go through that entire process right up to the end of actually packing it up and sending it, because I want you to see an overview of the whole thing. Okay. Let me just check quickly. Everybody says it's working all right. Bobby, I'm really sorry about the spring thing. It's yeah, I mean, I'm surprised it's come so soon. I'm sorry you haven't got yours yet, but one thing we can be sure of is life is change, and spring will come to you eventually too. Romy, coming late is no problem at all. Don't worry about it. As just you're free to just bounce in and out of this as we go along. Don't forget, it's all going to be recorded. It's lovely if you're here, because then you might think of things you want to ask whilst you're watching, and you can just pop them in the chat. But you know, it doesn't have to be. Pedgman, really good to see you. Thanks for popping in. Your site looks killer, by the way. I had a look at it yesterday. You've done a brilliant job of that. Yes. Okay, right. I'm going to get started. I'm going to start telling you. I haven't done anything yet except set it up. So let me talk about that quickly first. As I was saying, these flowers came from the garden, all right? They're very small, so I'm doing a small painting, my usual size, 7 by 5, and I'm doing it on one of these ampersand. Let's see if I can zoom that in. Ampersand. Let me just check the monitor so I can see that you can see that right. Ampersand gesso board panel. It's not gesso, it's an acrylic primed hardboard panel, but they're very light, they're dimensionally stable, they're strong, and the surface is all right. It's not the best in the world. For me, my favourite is oil grounds on canvas, but it's all right. You know, it works really well, and they're very, very practical if you're doing some work that you're hoping to send out. Don't ever do it on stretched canvas, because it's just it's too. For one thing, painting on stretched canvas is a really bad idea anyway, because it's not dimensionally stable, and the painting will crack at some point. You can get all kinds of problems with stuff that they put on the linen seeping through over time into the paint, and if you're going to ship it, you don't want it on something floppy like canvas, you know, because a heel could go through anything, you know, the corner of another box. So that's why these things are so great. The only drawback with them is they come in fairly standard sizes, so which is why so many of my pieces are 7 by 5. But it's a constraint you can work within, you know, it's not too difficult. I've also got some this size, teeny little ones, 3 by 3 inches, that I'm going to do some little nature paintings on. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those yet. I actually bought them by accident, and I thought, actually, that's really cool. I can probably do something with those. Just let me catch up. Well, Pedgman, you got a photo and everything. Well done. That's really organised. And Renee too. Okay, so those are the panels I'm working on now. I've spent probably about an hour already choosing which of my little vases I was going to put these flowers in. This one is really nice because it has a very narrow top, so very small bunch of flowers like this will be held up. But most of the time that I've spent is deciding on the background. And I do that by, I have a lot of different, let me just show you quickly. A lot of different pieces of paper of varying values and colours. Usually they're pretty low chroma because I don't want a background colour that argues too much with the subject, but they go right from quite dark, you know, to very light. And what that means is I can set up the painting so that where I want the focus to be, I make sure it stands out. This would have looked nice as an overall painting with a lighter background, but you couldn't really see the flowers, so I had to have a background which is lower in value, okay, than the flowers to make them stand out. The other thing is, I've also got, you can see this kind of piece of wood which is leaning against the shelf, which is producing a cast shadow into the background, and that's lowering the value on one side of the background, and that side is where the snowdrops are. So the biggest value kind of contrast between the background and the flowers is there, so it makes the snowdrops stand out more. The primroses stand out pretty well anyway because they're the highest chroma. They've got the most colour of anything. Everything else is really, really low chroma. So that's why I've set this up as it's set up now. If you've got any questions about that. Oh, we do. Why do you use plain paper instead of cloth? I don't use cloth because I don't want to be distracted by folds and actually painting, thinking that I need to paint the folds. I do use cloth very rarely sometimes, but with paper I just find it allows me to really quickly set up, to try out lots of different hues and values, and then it's a good springboard for how I can decide how I want the background to look, mostly, and that's down to how I apply the paint, because I like the backgrounds to be slightly rough, and it helps that the subject stand out a little bit. I think if I used cloth, I would be worried that I would start getting into painting the cloth, and I have done that on a number of occasions. So firstly, I use paper because it's really practical. You can try out different ones really quickly. And secondly, it means that I've just got something blank and then I can make up what I want really as the background. It's just, I just want something very simple, a foil to the subject. I don't want it to distract. Okay, so let's switch over to, I'll show you the cameras we've got set up today. This is the first one, which is on the subject. The palette, I think, is that a little bit dark? I think it's probably all right, but tell me if you think that's a little bit. I'll try and I'll bring up the exposure a little bit on that one. It'll just take me a second. They're very handy, these cameras, because I can control them from the laptop, which means, you know, when you're doing everything kind of by yourself, it makes it much easier. Let's see, is that better? Yeah, I think that's a bit better. It should probably show. I might change it a little bit as we go. You can see a little bit of the subject, but not much. And you can also see my framer, which is exactly the same size as this. It has this little thread grid, which makes it easy for me to draw out really fast. I use this less these days, but I'm going to use it today because it's going to enable me to draw out things, get them in the right general area much faster. And speed is of the essence with flowers, especially ones like this, and I can see that the snowdrops are already moving, so I really need to get started pretty soon. So I'm working sight size, so I'll be, let me show you again on the other camera. I'll be standing like this most of the time while I paint. So I'm looking at the subject, and I'm transferring what I see there over to here. Now obviously I'm not doing it just exactly, otherwise I may as well just do a copy of the photo. I'm looking to use this as a kind of a springboard, but I will try and get, when I paint the flowers, really, really close to what I'm seeing, you know. So that's the subject camera, and then of course we've got the palette. Get this little fella out of the way. I think the light might have dropped off a tiny bit since I set up, but maybe I'll bring up the exposure on that one a little bit too. Make sure you can see the palette okay. It's a bit of a fiddle trying to make sure that the cameras are all balanced, but it's really worth it, because then what you see down here on the palette is pretty much the same as what you see on the painting surface. So the first thing I'm going to want to do with this is to draw it out. Okay, I want a rough, I don't want to spend forever on this, I just want it out fairly quickly, but I want a rough idea of where everything is going to go on here. Let me go back to the palette quickly, because I want to show you. This is something people ask me about a lot, and I've never really talked about that much, and I probably should more, is how do I choose what colours I put out. So firstly, I've got none out at the moment, right? I always have ivory black. There are a very small number that I will have in any setup. They'll always be there. I'll always have ivory black. That gives me the lowest possible value that I can reach with paint. So I want that in there for sure. This is lead white from Rublev. I will use that on the flowers for the texture, especially on the snowdrops, but I'll start out just by putting titanium white down. Now titanium white goes to a higher value than this does, flake white. So from there to there represents the highest possible range that I can get in paint. So I know that that's my value range. Down the bottom end, I'll always have burnt umber. These are convenience colours really. And raw umber. I generally put more raw umber out because I usually use more of that. Now, don't think of these so much as burnt and raw umber. I don't anyway, I try not to. You know I use Munsell to paint. This is orange. Burnt umber is a very low value orange. Raw umber is a very low value yellow orange. They're just both outrageously useful colours. Now for the rest of the stuff that I'm going to want between here and here, I'll be looking at the subject and deciding what colours I think I'm going to need in order to reach what I can see there. Now the background is a kind of it's a greenish blue. So I think what I'll put out for that, which will probably get me close, is cerulean blue. I'm arranging these in order of value, by the way, from darkest at the bottom to lightest at the top. That's much higher chroma than the colour I'll actually want, but I can, that's going to be a good starting point for the background that I can mix my background colour from. I'm going to want some green. For the snowdrops, the stems of the snowdrops. Now what I usually do for this is I'll put out, this is bright green lake. It's high chroma, yellowish green. And I'll probably want a lower chroma one too, so this is sap green. So that's now given me a range of greens. Neither of these will be right, but they're a starting point for me to mix from. I'm also going to put out yellow ochre, because for the background especially, I know I'm going to need to pull that cerulean. Let's move that down, this one. I know I'm going to need to pull this towards green and drop the chroma. And yellow ochre will be useful for that. Pop him in there. And I'm going to want, for the primroses, they're a slightly greenish yellow, I think. But let's This is the interesting part. So I know at this point that I've got most of this painting covered. You notice that I haven't really got any high chroma stuff out yet. I'm only going up to middle chromas. This is the highest chroma in here, and I'm going to have to knock those back quite a lot anyway as I'm painting. But let me show you. I'm going to change to the camera on the subject now, and I'll show you how I'll find out exactly what colour, just as a starting point, those primroses are. Sarah, what type of cameras do you use? DSLRs? They're not actually. I'm going to, what I'll do at some point is I'll put up a, excuse me, I'm having a sip of tea. I'll put up some information about the full setup that I use for streaming. I must tell you that I've invested quite a lot, probably just shy of £10,000 in the streaming kit that I use now. You absolutely don't need to spend that much to stream, but I wanted to make sure that I had basically recorded video quality but live over the internet, and that meant, and I also wanted multiple cameras, and that meant spending quite a bit of money. So what I've actually got is two Blackmagic micro cinema cameras, which are really handy because they're very small and light and I can control them from the laptop. And then I've got a Panasonic GH5, which is the camera that I have on me. Okay, now let's go back for a second to the palette, because what I've got out here is my Munsell book. Okay, and endeavour not to get paint on the back of it. Wouldn't be the first time though. So I'm just thinking about hue, and I want to get to the right kind of hue area. So I'm just going to flick through until I feel that I can see a colour that's pretty near to what I can see on the primroses, and I'm looking at them, I'm thinking it's probably somewhere around here, maybe here. Okay, now this is 10Y, which is a very greenish yellow. So I might have to do some gymnastics to be able to show you this without getting in the way. But I can actually just hold this up in front of them, and I think hopefully you can see as well as I can that that is actually a little bit, it's close, but it's a little bit too yellow and it needs to be slightly more green. Do you agree? Slightly more green than that. Which is interesting. It means it's going to go around further green, further towards green than I thought it would. So if I want to go, I'm just moving around the hue wheel, so I'll just go to the next page. And this looks very green indeed to me, but let's pull out the same ones. We have, pull out these two and we'll check them. They kind of look quite greenish to me. But let's check them. The chroma is too low. But some of the colours that I'm seeing there are looking quite close. This one, the value is it's maybe about right. It's slightly high, maybe about right for the very highest values. So let's go back to the book again. Pick up some higher chroma ones. So I've just got these two now. I'll pick up another one as well just to see. So this is kind of surprising to me. I would have gone, if I'd just gone straight to my tube colours, I would have gone more towards yellow and less green. That's actually very close to the very lightest parts, although the chroma is slightly high. I will often want slightly more chroma than I can see, because you lose some in your mixes. That's very close to some of the colours that I can see there. But this is overall, it's very close indeed, but I think we've gone slightly too green, very slightly. And the shadow areas are slightly darker than this, that dark shadow area. So let's try, I always go through this process at the start of every painting just so I really know where I am. Let's say I pick this one. And I'm also going to, because I know that shadows generally yellow and green will generally move this way around the hue wheel towards orange. I'll get one from the next page as well. So these are the same hue, sorry, the same value and chroma, just different hue. As I thought, that's close, but is a little too green. Very close indeed. So I would say for the color area that I want to be in for the primroses, for the lights, is kind of around here. Okay, so I'm holding these at the same angle to the panel. That's very important. I think actually I have the camera slightly overexposed. Just let me change it in a minute. I think it'll be easier to see these. Yeah, hopefully you can see the colours more clearly now. But over into the shadows, they're pulling slightly, you could say slightly warmer, and I couldn't argue with you, but I prefer to think of it as a pull towards orange yellow. So if I have these colours, I'm going to be able to pretty much know what I can see there in terms of the primroses. Now obviously for the snowdrops, I pretty much know what I've got. So that's given me a really good starting place, right? I'll put those to one side. But I also want to be thinking about, I want to find a colour that's really close to the background. I want it for the shadow and the light. I'm just getting the other Munsell book out now because it comes in 2 volumes. This is the blue volume, blue and purple. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll just go through. Ordinarily I would just I would do this as I say for every painting that I do in any case. I would say we're probably, for the light part, it's probably about a value 7. It's low chroma. It's actually closer to grey than this. Let's try the next one along as well, slightly more green. Okay, so I've got these two as a guess. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold them over. The value is too high. You can see that immediately, right? And the chroma is way too high. So let's get a lower value of one of them to start with. The value is right for the light. Can you see that? The value looks almost bang on, but the chroma is too high. So in go back to the other Munsell book and I'll show you something which I think is really, really useful. And that was a very low chroma blue that I had there, but it's still much higher. And I see people do this all the time, is get chroma too high. Okay, so I want to get right over to the beginning of this book, and it has these chips here. Now these are chroma 1, almost grey, in all different hues, and it's incredibly useful to have them because these very low chromas are very difficult to judge. So the value was about 7, right? This is chroma 1. This is a blue-green. I'm not tied to these colours, by the way, but I just want to know actually what I'm seeing before I start. Slightly light. Same hue and chroma. Lower value. Say that's looking very close. It's probably a bit too yellow. And probably still slightly high in chroma. Goes to show how low chroma that really is. But it's going to be something like that. And for the shadow side, unfortunately, you can't see that so well. Let's say this is, let me show you what I'm picking up here. I'm getting this one here, which is a value 4. So this is the value I've got for the light of the background. This is the value 4 for the dark. Yeah, the value is about right. But what's interesting about this is where I can I can't really show you it because the framer is in the way. But because it's a shadow and there's a lot of ambient reflected light from the room, which is kind of orangish, the value is right, but the hue, the chroma is, the hue is slightly wrong. The hue is too blue. So I would be inclined to choose something that would be near to the background and more from the oranges. So this is going over towards purple, so I want to be back this way towards orange and yellow. I've gone quite a long way around. This is a green yellow, and it's just about right. So there's because the chroma is so low, that hue shift is quite big. I'm using this instead of this, and that gives me. And actually, we'll stay on the palette for a little bit. My background colours, and you can see hopefully that these are going to stand out fairly well against this background. I may drop the value of the background even further than this. These aren't hard and fast colours that I have to hit, but they're starting points. And what's happened here is I've got myself way closer to the actual colours of the subject than I otherwise would have. You know, just by doing those few checks. Let me just have a quick look at that. Yeah, Michael Harding, Bright Green Lake. But any higher chroma, mid to high value green will do. It doesn't matter so much that you have the exact paints that I have. In fact, it doesn't matter at all. What matters is that you have tube paints which can reach the gamut of what you need, so you don't run out of chroma at all the various hues and values that you want to be painting at. Chroma is generally not that much of an issue because most of the world is much lower chroma than people generally assume. And doing some checks like this, I still get surprised sometimes by some of the things I find. But it allows you to make sure that you're in the right area straight away in terms of hue and chroma. And now an interesting thing about this subject is that, let me show you, or actually probably just as well, if you just have a look on the photo that I've given you for download. No, actually, no, this is going to be clear if I do go back. Yeah, Kay, I know you can only see the primroses. I'm sorry. That's why I put the photo for download with a link below the video, because the camera is slightly to the side of where I am. So the frame is obscuring the snowdrops. I'll take it down once I'm sure I've got things kind of roughed out. Yeah, Pejman, absolutely right. Yeah, a lot of the world is below even chroma 2. It's incredible. And I'll tell you something else. When you really pull down the chroma of your colours, what starts to happen is your paintings not only look way more realistic, they also, to my eye at least, start to look more beautiful as well. You build a kind of a sensitivity to colour through realising how low chroma a lot of the world is. And gaining control of chroma is a really important skill to have in painting, I think. What I was going to show you something quickly. Let me just show you. This is something that I will stop and explain because it's such a useful thing to know. Now I have my panel here is flat on to me, but some of the snowdrops, the angle they are to the light is more like that. Now I've got two little value strips here. Now they're both exactly the same. This is titanium white, albeit a little old and faded. But some of the planes of those snowdrops are actually facing the light. Okay, so they're like this, which means that if I put down my lightest light here, titanium white, I still won't be able to reach the lightest lights of those snowdrops there. It's one of the basic, that's slightly yellowed actually, I think. It's one of the basic problems of painting, especially if you've got white objects, is that the value range that you have available to you in paint is smaller than the value range that you see. And it can make life incredibly difficult. Oh, I think, have I got a sound problem? I'm sorry. I had one of my mics was switched off. Hopefully this should be much better now, the sound. I had it switched off to save the battery before I started and I forgot to switch it on. Is the sound much better now? Hopefully the sound should be much better now. I've got two mics set up basically, and I only had one turned on, which is a bit daft. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to get straight on and start roughing this out. So the way I do this these days is I pick up a little bit of raw umber. I used to use terps with it, but I don't use any now, because what I found is if you get some raw umber, a little bit of raw umber or whatever colour you want to use on your brush, and then wipe most of it off, it becomes, you can kind of draw with it much more easily as if it were charcoal. So let's establish really quickly like the middle point of this panel. Let's say I'm using the grid today to let me get moving and get those flowers in the right place really quickly. Without having to spend a lot of time redrawing. That it would be a disaster with these. It wouldn't be so bad if I was painting something else, but with these flowers, if I got them halfway through and then realised that I needed to move them, I may as well junk the painting because the flowers will be wilting. They'll probably be wilting in about an hour. So I want to get them in pretty quick. So I'm just going to start roughing them in really, really quickly. The size of the brush. Yeah, sorry about the mic thing. This is it's a Cornelison's brush, and it's series 42, and it's a 1. I would say in terms of size, it's about 5mm across, because unfortunately not all brush makers use the same standards for sizes. These brushes are actually they've been discontinued, which is a big shame. They're the best brushes I've ever found, even better than Rosemary's. So I'm gonna establish where I'm looking across from one to the other, and I'm going to establish where the top of the shelf is. This bit you just kind of have to imagine, because this is the thing with sight size. I can't show you my exact view, but what I'm doing is I'm sighting across from the panel to the subject, and I've established the top of the shelf, which means that have I just moved? Did I move that? Oh, no, it's all right. Which means that I can always use that to get myself back into position. Now, the next thing I want to do is roughly the top and the bottom of the vase. Get those in the right place. So again, I'm just sighting straight across. This is another way of making sure with the grid and sight sizing that I get things established really quickly in the right place. But the center of the vase, I'm centering in the composition the flowers, not the vase, so the vase will be slightly to the right. So I'll get the furthest left edge. About there, and the furthest right about here, which puts the middle somewhere between them, so that's about the center of the vase down here. And I'll also put in where the background is, what do I mean by that? Where the back of the shelf touches the background. It gives me another reference point.
Now all of this will appear extremely different to you in position on the camera here, but if you have a look at the photo, you should find that what I'm doing here will slowly start to resemble pretty closely, hopefully anyway, what's in the photo. Not too bothered about exact painting now, but I just want to make sure that everything is in the right place. My vase is looking slightly elongated. I think the top of it is actually... it might just be an aberration, because that's one of the complications of drawing things out, is when you see just a shape drawn like this, it can look very, very different than when you've actually filled it in as mass. But that's something like, right, flowers. Furthest snowdrop across. Out here. Again, you're going to be better off looking at your reference picture here, along with what I'm doing here, rather than what you can see on the screen. I'll remove the frame in a second. Primrose. First primrose is about here. So I'm sizing, and I'm using the grid as well as a kind of a backup to enable me to get things established really quickly and accurately. I hope accurately. We'll see as we go. Because I want to get some background in to establish the value balance, and then I want to start painting the flowers as soon as I can. Do it. Shadow, a shadow coming back here, cast shadow here. Oh. Just going to check that by eye a little bit. And looking all right, I think. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, you can see those little grid marks, yeah. It might not be, the photo as well might not be perfectly from my position, but it will be very close. oh, what you want to do with the photo, yeah, is right click over it, and download it, and then open it separately so you can flick from one to the other. So download it to your computer if you can, either that or right click and open in a new browser window if you're on a tablet. On a phone, I'm not sure how it will work, but you want to download it separately. Don't just open it from the download link. Right click on it and download. Sorry, I should have been clearer about that. And that should help you. Yeah, right click and save it, yeah. Let's get a shot at this now. Pretty much done its job. I've used it to set up the subject and to get the drawing out done really fast. So now you can see a little bit more of the subject. So my next job is on the palette. What I want to do is I want to get some stuff established around here, roughly, the value and roughly the hue, making sure the chroma is very low. For what's going around, I can see these snowdrops are going already. They're going already. I might have to go back to the photo for some of them. The one at the back here is already wilting. So I want some of the background put in reasonably quickly, so that I can immediately get on with the flowers. What I would often do if I'm not pushed for time is I'll individually mix all of these colours very, very carefully and set them out as strings, and then the actual painting will go quicker. But I'm going to be a little bit more quick and dirty today because I really want to get on with those flowers, so I'm going to get that and that together as quickly as I can. I'll still follow the basic principles that I always do of mixing, but I'm going to just be quick. So I'm going to bring the blue up to about the right value, too light. I'll bring that back down with raw umber because I know I'm going to need to bring that would bring the chroma down and swing the hue a little bit too. Bring some black in because it's putting in too much chroma. So I'm basically, if you've done my colour course or colour mixing course, I'm doing a really fast version of what I do, what I show you in that course. Very close, but the value is slightly high. I'm going to bring that down with a little bit of raw umber and a little bit of black so it doesn't have too much chroma. I'm not so worried, I just want it to be very close. Yeah, good. This one. Again, I'll start with cerulean blue, and I'm going to bring it down. That obviously is way too high chroma. The value is actually about right. So let's get some raw umber. Bring it up to the value I want with white. Just dark still. I'm not too worried about that. I don't mind if this is going to be a bit dark because I can scrub it. I like my shadows to be slightly translucent. So as long as I end up with something that's like this on the panel, it might be alright if this is a bit darker. I can scrub it on more thinly. Let's go with that. Let's see. It's a lot darker than the actual, but if I scrub it on, it might work out alright. And I can also mix between these two as well as I go. So I'm going to start off with some of this. I'm just using the brush that I've already got in my hand. This is decision time because I need to decide how I want the texture to be, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to bring in a little bit of Terps, which will lighten this little, but it will also thin it out. You always find, especially when you're painting on a light panel, that the first bits of colour that you put on appear dark, because everything here is almost like a value 9. It's like the lightest value that it can be.
It's coming out slightly warmer. It's slightly more towards.
It's the addition of the Terps. I think I've noticed that before. When you put Terps into paint, it often changes the hue a little. So I want this to have some texture. I don't want it to be really smooth. It's a personal aesthetic choices. It's not something that you need to do. At this point, we're moving into the shadow over this side. This is the kind of I was think of this as the jumping off the cliff moment, when you're like, oh my God, is this painting going to work out? Is the subject going to be nice enough? Am I going to be able to translate those colours? Will the flowers just look like dabs of paint? Is it going to come out horrendous, or is it going to work? No idea at this point. So for the shadow side, I change brush.
I think the light's dropping a bit actually.
I think the sun's gone in. I might have to bring the cameras up a little bit more. Now then, I'm trying to decide whether to paint this with Terps or whether to bring some medium in, and I think I'm going to bring in a little bit of medium for the translucency. This is Dave Corcoran's fumed silica medium. I will supply a link to this if you want to get hold of some. I like it very much. The reason I like this medium so much is it's very like oleo gel from Natural Pigments, except it's stiffer. But what I like about it is it dries with a very even finish. It dries with a similar kind of sheen to it, slightly satin sheen, as opaque oil paint, which means that when I've finished the painting, I shouldn't have any really really matte parts standing out.
And I like that very much, because it means that when I ship the painting, it's still going to look good. And it's also
a nice paint, a nice medium to work with. Only use it very little. Be too light to start with. So this is like that for me is generally like I paint the first kind of stages of a painting in this state of near panic, when I don't know if the painting is going to work out or not, and I immediately think I'm thinking of all the things that can and probably will go wrong. My big worry at the moment is that the snowdrops are changing quite quickly, and I'm not going to get to them before they've changed too much. I'm going to be too slow. main thing that's striking me at the moment is that with the medium, this shadow colour has too much. The hue has shifted too much towards brown. It's maybe too much chroma. Yeah, the value is not bad, but it's too brown, so that the hue has changed too much from this side, so it doesn't look like it's belonged to it. So let's pop back to the palette. Sorry, I'm kind of in the flow now, so I'll check the comments in a minute. So I want something more blue. So this time we'll stay very much on the blue side, and I'll cerulean and black. Ivory black is basically a very low chroma blue. So between the two of these, I should end up with something which is close. And I've already got quite a bit out there on the painting, so I'll go in just with the grey blue, about the same value, bring in a little bit more white, and let's see what happens. So I'm adjusting as I go, but I'm being guided, I suppose, partly here by knowledge, colour knowledge, in that I know that shadow hues don't change that much from the lights. They do change, but not that much. And also from what I've checked quickly before I started with the Munsell strips. It may well be that this will work fairly well in the painting anyway. I tend to mess with the backgrounds quite a lot as I go through a painting, and I don't want to get too hung up on spending too much time on this bit right now, because always in the back of my mind is the semi-panic about the flowers, how long they're going to last. I'm going to quickly, with a bit of raw umber and black, a little white, but all of this is really, really low chroma. Just want to kind of get these established, so I'm kind of covering that white, so that when I start to put the flowers in there, they've got something to work against. Some of this that I'm doing now will show at the end, and some of it won't. I won't really know until I get further through how much. Let's have a quick break, a gulp of tea, and I'll quick look at see if there's anything I need to check in the chat. Okay, says, do you always position your support on the extreme far left of the easel? Usually I do, but only because it's in relation to the light, in relation to the window. So I'll have the subject to the left of the painting, closer to the light, which means that this will always be over here. This will always be far over to the left. I just want this to be right next to it as I'm painting, you know, so I can do this kind of this straight translation from one to the other. If my easel was round the other way, I would have it on the right. Yeah, that's right. It's very close to the subject. So that's one of the main things of sight size is you can flick your eye back and forth. And most of the time, I have one eye closed and I throw the other one out of focus. So you kind of look a bit odd while you're painting, probably. But I want to make sure I don't get hung up in details, and I'm looking for the overall effect at this point, what they call the big look in sight size, the overall kind of appearance of light. The panel is 7 by 5, 7 inches by 5 inches. Yeah, that's the one. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Renee, sorry. Okay, let me get back to this. Let me know, actually, by the way, in the chat if there's anything, if you want to see more palette, or you don't want to see as much palette, you just want to see more of the actual painting, let me know. And if there's anything else that you would like to see more of, that's fine too. I can't change the position of the cameras now, but it might make a difference for the next time. I'm just putting in the very darkest point of this painting is this shadow down here right next to the vase, so I want to get that in, so I've kind of got I've anchored my value range. And it's quite dark a little bit back here too. Just putting in a couple of notes, darker colours, so that I've got something of the balance. That's probably enough for me to start thinking about the flowers. Now I really need to decide whether I'm going to go for the primroses, which is what I want to do, or to try and get something of the snowdrops done first, because it looks like the primroses are a bit more stable than the snowdrops. The primroses are kind of, they're the main event really for me. Let's start painting in a little of the snowdrops first. I may zone out here and forget to talk. It would be good if there was some kind of virtual electric prod that you could prod me with to remind me to talk. But we'll see how we go. So I'm going to get out there's a lot of oil coming out. I'm going to get my lead white out. I like this paint, but it separates a lot in the tube. So when that happens, I squeeze it out onto some kitchen roll. And then the oil the excess oil seeps into the kitchen roll. You waste a bit of paint, but not much. Then pick it up, stick it on the palette. The reason I've got this paint is for the texture. I like the texture of it to paint with. Now at this point I need to really slow down. I need to make myself slow down, stop the panic, and think carefully about these flowers and how I'm going to paint them. There's very little really that's to do on the snowdrops. So I want to make sure that what I do counts. It's mostly going to be about the values. And from the light to the shadow, they're slightly yellow. So I do a lot of this these days. This is like a very, very quick and dirty value string. Just by its, this is raw umber here, right up to flake white. So I'm going to establish, can do it, the very lightest part. Very lightest petal is this one here. Right, that's in the right place. So on my palette now, I've got the background that I've already mixed as well, so I can kind of cut into this. And hopefully sculpt this. What I really want now is, I have a feeling that these snowdrops aren't going to work unless I get the drawing pretty accurate, because there's not very much going on in them. So I'm just going to try and draw them accurately to bring out their character. So I'm just looking very closely at the shape. Moment. Does anyone have any thoughts about the subject, the composition at this point? Do you think it's a good one, or if there's anything that you would do differently? Please feel free. Stick a comment in the chat. I'm not looking for absolute perfection, but I also, because it would take too long, but I do want to make sure that what I have here is close and it works. I want this to look like, to feel like a snowdrop petal. Let's do the one behind it now. Gonna need a smaller brush. Oh, Barbara, that's such a brilliant point. I didn't think about doing that. I always have mine sitting sideways. I never thought of that. I will definitely do that from now on. But usually the oil comes out of the top though, doesn't it? I'll try it and see anyway. I've just put it cap facing down. Don't know if I can paint on a canvas that small. Yeah. I guess the thing to do is to make sure you do a bit of both. These are good. I mean, you don't have to go this small. I sometimes do ones that are twice this size. What would it? Well, 8 by 10. You know, and they don't really cost much more to send. You need slightly bigger boxes, but there's no reason why you have to do small ones. I suppose I got into doing this because I was inspired to do this in the first place by Julian Merrow Smith and Dwayne Keyser, and they both did small paintings. So that's how I got into doing them like this. So I'm going to go on to the snowdrop at the back. Definitely going to need a smaller brush. I'm just thinking about possibly that one. Possibly that. Start with this. Now the value is lower, so I'm going to be choosing some paint from further down here as I paint, and I'm going to be trying to model the form a little bit more. Thanks, Shelley. It's nice to have a vote of confidence on the composition. You never know. I mean, you can set up something that you think looks really nice, you know, and then you can paint it and it looks entirely different. It just doesn't, you know, something about it doesn't work. That's happened to me so many times. I'm starting to get a feeling of shadow here, though. I think I'm going to leave that for now. The colour is slightly wrong, but not by much. And I think I'm going to leave it for now. What I can do, actually, I didn't think to set it up for this, and it would take too long to do now, but what I can do is have an insert on the screen, like say up here, which would show the palette. I've done that sometimes on live streams on Facebook, and I think it might be. Do you think that would be good, so you could see the palette? Because I can't flick every time I go from the palette to the painting, obviously, otherwise it would make you dizzy. I would just wonder if that would be a good idea to have the palette up here as well on a little insert. Let's get this petal in. Mostly just looking at flat shape at the moment. I'll think about form and light a bit more once I've got thing in the right position. This brush is horrible. This is a Winsor & Newton Monarch, I think they're called. Aesthetic. Not sure of the size because the writing's rubbed off. Nothing really very complex I'm doing at the moment. I'm just sorting out the drawing, trying to work slowly and deliberately, get things in the right place, and then I'll look and see what I think I need to change. I need to enjoy the painting now. This petal is going into shadow, so I need to drop the chroma quite a bit. Don't want to spend too long on these because I have a feeling they won't really need it. Because I think when you come to look at the painting, this area is going to be the most interesting bit. I just want to make sure these are well done enough that they work in the painting. I don't want to spend too long on them right now. This needs to be lighter here. Because it shows, with the tip of this one being lighter at the end, shows that it's coming forward out of the shadow. And that's the kind of thing, those little differences in value that create depth. That could only work, your brain will know, that could only work if this could only be lighter at the end if this petal was coming out of shadow, so it must be coming towards you, how we read things. Push this bit back, bring in the value down. Disappear a little bit into the background. Sharpen the edge here as well. So bring it forward. One thing I've been meaning to do, actually I haven't got around to it yet, is to get a fourth camera so I can have one that's zoomed right in on here. I'll try and get that one sorted out for the next month. Do the next demonstration. The problem, of course, is the more cameras I add, the more I have to remember to flick between them, and sometimes I just forget. And there's a petal back here, and it's gone right back into shadow. That's just a value change. Already I'm feeling that I need more. I need this petal here to be lighter, but it won't. I've gone pretty much as light as I can go. The only thing that I can do is to get a tiny bit of titanium, just pure titanium on the brush, and flick a bit on, which will raise the value very slightly because but the value of titanium is slightly higher. That's about the lightest I can get to, though. Now this one back here, this area I want to keep fairly sharp, but back here I want to just very gently, because it's disappearing into shadow, I'm going to overstate that a little bit. Edges are, edge handling is, I think, at least as important as value. It's not given much press, but it's one of the most important things you can do if you want to improve your paintings, is edge handling. this slightly in the wrong place. It needs to move a bit to the left. I want to run out of room for my primrose. It's the first time I've painted snowdrops. Interesting. There's not actually very much to them, if you know what I mean, in terms of what you're painting. But just little flecks, white really, different values. I think a lot of it is going to come down to the shape, making the shape recognizable. So if the drawing isn't all right, I think they won't work at all. So I'm kind of moving back from the left over to the right, gradually getting towards the primroses. When I'm putting paint down, I'm generally not looking at the subject. I look at the subject and decide what I want to do, and then I tend to look just at the painting whilst I'm doing it. Proving a bit tricky. The insert would be good, you reckon, Renee? Okay, I'll see what I can do about that. I have to paint it larger. Yeah, 8 by 10 is a good size, and they're still small enough to ship. Yeah, the difficulty with doing it as an insert, I can do it, is it obscures necessarily some of the screen, you know, so it kind of makes it a bit more tricky, making sure that everything is set up right. You can still see what you need to of the painting surface, but yeah, I mean, it can be done for sure. I've done it before. I'll sort that out for next time. Basically, I want you to see as much as possible of the method here to see, not necessarily because I'm saying this is how you should paint, but it might help you. And if you're thinking about doing work for sale, if you don't want to be paid pennies an hour, how long they take to do does matter. I've tried to paint faster than I do, and all that happens, I've found, is that I paint not very well. So these days I don't try to paint fast anymore, and the painting will take as long as it takes. The other consideration for me, of course, is since I do a combination of selling work and teaching online, some offline teaching, but mostly online. Any painting that you do is also useful for you to post and publish, because it shows what you can do, you know. So I don't think what I say about colour would be very convincing if my own colour wasn't very convincing. Makes sense. If my own colour sense, the colours in my paintings were quite poor, and my paintings didn't have any level of skill or impression of reality to them, then what I say about colour wouldn't be very convincing. Or even, in fact, if I didn't post my work, I never trust people who profess to teach artists if they're not artists themselves. There are a number of people out there who already teach what I've started teaching now in Threads, which is the online marketing sides of things, promoting yourself as an artist and making a living online. They do it from a rather different perspective than I do. But often they're not artists themselves. I think they've seen an opportunity, but they're marketers. Sometimes who know artists, and it's not the same thing, you know, I think. But it is very, very useful if you want to do some teaching online. Even if all you want to do is teach, I think it's really important that you show work. And obviously that the work is of, you know, a reasonable standard. I'm just trying to soften things behind a little bit, not too much, because I don't want it to. I don't want it to lose this texture, because I like that. Got some drawing problems with my petals. I'm trying to sort out at the moment. Things have a characteristic shape, and if you can get it right, or very close, they'll tend to be convincing, and if you don't, they won't. And that's true of fruit and flowers and pretty much everything. Almost as much as it is for portraits. All right. That's okay, I think. I mean, enough for me to see how the snowdrops are going to work, and I've got the main bits in, and I've begun to feel my way into how I can paint them and have them look all right. So I want to know now mostly how they're going to work against the primroses. So the next bit of work that I need to do is on the palette. Remember, if you have any questions about anything as we go along, just pop it in the chat. I'll only be looking at it periodically now because this to me is I'm in the most important part of the painting. The painting will stand or fall at this stage. If I don't get something, if it doesn't work here, it's no amount of messing about with it is likely to sort it out. So I want to make sure that I'm producing something at this point that the main relationships and everything and the drawing out is going to work. Okay, so I want to get these colours together now. I want to mix up a little string because this is the most important part of the painting, is those primroses. And a lot of it, where the success or otherwise of the primroses is going to depend on, my palette table is really wobbly today. A lot of the success or failure of those primroses, I think, is going to depend on me being able to make the form convincing, you know, and that will show the light. So this is where I really want to be focusing. So I'm going to mix these colors here. I'm going to immediately, I can see I don't have what I need on here. I'm going to need a greenish yellow of a higher chroma, and I think what I'm going to use, I could certainly use cadmium yellow if I had to and swing it, but I think I'm probably going to use, I'll use cadmium yellow lemon. This is, again, it's a Michael Harding paint, but I don't think so much the brand or the name of the paint, just think greenish yellow and you'll be about right. And if you don't have a greenish yellow, you can make a greenish yellow, because the chroma I need here isn't at the upper reaches of chroma. If it was, then it would be more critical that I had a lemon yellow, but it's not. So first let's find out what value this lemon yellow is against these colours. And you can see there pretty clearly that it's closest to this one. It's lighter than these. So at the very top, the very highest values, I think if I want to drop the chroma. Let's try just going with a little bit of titanium white, which will raise the value and begin to drop the chroma. And I think I'm going to try, I need to drop the chroma further than that. I think it's still too yellow and it needs to go around to greenish yellow. So let's try mixing a little bit of this high chroma yellowish green, and I'm going to bring it right up to the value I need, and that will also take the sting out of it. It will reduce the chroma an awful lot. So if I then go between these two, let's have a bit more of that. Need more titanium white. Actually, no, let's use flake. Let's use flake for the texture. It's already quite close. So this, with a small amount of this, to bring in the chroma, is going to get me close. And hopefully, what I want you to get from this, what I'm doing here, if there's something to learn, it's the amount of time I'm happy to spend to try and make sure that I get the right colours down. And it's probably the main thing that's changed about the way I paint now than the way I used to paint. I used to just get close, guess, think it was probably right. Maybe do a quick check holding it up in front of the painting and then just go with it. Over time, I've realised that colour is incredibly subtle, and it's not difficult, but it is subtle, and you need to spend time with it. This change from here to here, or from there to there, will be enough to show something turning away from the light. A slightly higher chroma, but I'm going to keep it because I generally like them to be very slightly higher chroma than what I'm aiming for. Because sometimes you lose a little bit in the painting, and sometimes it's just nice to have a bit to push the chroma a little, just for the sake of the painting. Going for this next one along now. So I don't mind being slightly higher chroma, as long as it's not too much. The value needs to come down and the chroma looks like it's quite a lot higher than it needs to be, so I'm going to bring in a little bit of this, which is just raw umber and white, remember, of about the value that I want. Need more. So this is, what I'm doing here is I'm bracketing chroma. So raw umber and white is a very low chroma yellow. A little more. Good. My little palette table's rocking around all over the place today. This is actually the first painting I've done this year. I've been so busy setting up threads and everything. I've finished a painting that I started before Christmas. And I put all my setup together today, and I forgot to chalk up the wonky leg. I'm using the same ingredients, if you like, here. I'm just using more raw umber to drop the value. And these colours look very green, and I may pull them more yellow. I may decide to pull them more yellow on the painting. But let's get them in right, because it's a very distinctive colour, that kind of, the yellow of these flowers. There's a bit in the middle of them which is much stronger chroma and definitely moves more towards orange yellow, and I probably will want to get cadmium out for that, but we'll see. Now this one is more towards yellow, so more towards an orange yellow. I think I'm going to bring that one down with a little bit of yellow ochre, and the reason I put yellow ochre in it is because it's an orangey yellow. I'll bring it down a little bit of the way, and then I'll bring it down the rest of the way with raw umber. And let's see what happens. Too orangey, I think. Come down a little bit more in value. It's too orange. So what I want is something that's slightly more green, of the same value. So I'll bring that green down way too far. That's not right at all. What am I thinking? All right, but the chroma is too high. I'm going to bring it down. The chroma is too high, and if I then bring it back up with some white, I'll have a dropped chroma. of the right value, slightly more green. So I'm just making something that's moving slightly around the hue wheel from orange yellow to green. Some of that, a little bit of that in. I just want to swing the hue. I think these things make a big difference to the to how convincing your modelling of form is if you can handle colour well from light to shadow. So that didn't take too long, but I've now got set up ready a little string.
So I can now go back to the painting and start to model these forms.
Still looks too green to me. I may swing it more towards yellow.
And I guess it's worth noting here, I mean, some people can paint incredibly fast, but my method is it's not so much the method, I suppose, it's how fast I'm comfortable painting. And I generally paint pretty slowly and methodically. And no matter how I try, I seem to have a natural pace. I don't know if you find the same thing, but if I try to push that pace, the painting doesn't go so well. Oh, let me have a little, while I'm thinking about it. Sorry, let me just have a quick look. We've gone out of focus. Ooh, what happened? Okay, Kate. You've probably already gone by now, but don't forget, of course, that there's a download for it. It will be recorded, so you'll be able to see it. What? Yeah. Oh, battery. All right. Yeah, the focus did go a little bit for you there from the sound of things. It looks all right on this end. Sometimes YouTube will drop the video quality, but it will drop it at your end. I've got good bandwidth here, so what's going out from me to you should be fairly high, but it might go down at your end. An ethereal look. That's nice to know. Probably about to destroy it now. Okay, let's go into these primroses then and see what I really want to get. These might last till tomorrow, but they might not. I really want to get the main shapes established and the forms here. So I'm looking, what I want to do immediately is, in two values, is get the light and the shadow. So I want all of this light, I want this light, and then I want shadow and shadow, and I want light and shadow, and I want them to be the right shape. That's all really I'm thinking about, just sticking them in two values, and then everything else I can kind of sort out as I go, if you like. So I'm going to start with the light. And I'm going to use the colours that I just mixed, unadulterated, and then we'll I can step back and see what I think. I want to be careful of the shapes. I may find that there's a value problem, and that once I painted the primroses that the snowdrops don't look as light, but we'll see. So that's light, side of the primrose. I don't want to get into details at the moment, I just want to do shapes. I'm just thinking about main shapes and light and shadow. Main form and light and shadow is all I really want. And I'll choose a different brush
for each of those. Light, shadow. So I guess you could say I'm trying to think simultaneously of mostly the value and the shape at the same time. So I'm not really painting individual petals, but I am trying to get the outline of them, the overall shape about right. So light around here. I'm going to be looking for this shape first. Went and used my dark brush. So I put some light paint on my dark brush, so when I painted with it, the value dropped. Take that out. That'll learn me. Be more careful about which brush I'm using. Light brush. I'm going to paint a little bit of what's around them there, the pot, because I want to be able to kind of cut into those shapes from the other side, if you know what I mean, on the outside, so that I can control the contours of these petals. Otherwise, it's very hard to see because they're lighter there, because I'm painting a very light value against white, so I can't really see what I'm doing. Can't need darker value, the background there. Let's get these shapes established first. I think this is difficult to see on the screen, but I think there's something nice is beginning to happen with the thick opaque paint here of the petals, in that it's starting to become the shape of the petal, if you like, because there's a slight ridge at the edge of each stroke I put down, If I'm careful, I can make that ridge kind of describe the edge of a petal. It's too high chrome now. Talking about sizes of paintings, actually, I have lately started to think about, I haven't actually got around to it yet, wanting to do some bigger ones, because I'm finding that like the shapes of these petals here, they're very fiddly to do at this size. And some things it's kind of hard to make convincing really small. Although I guess really it's just a case of being more patient. Pretty sure there's a value relationship that's off here. I want this to come darker. Maybe because my snowdrops are slightly darker on my panel than they are in real life. I want to go mad. I think I want it a bit darker here. I also don't want to lose the texture. Sometimes with something like this, I'll leave it till the next day and then sort it out later, but I'll just make a note of that change now. By the way, because you're looking at it slightly from the other side, this shadow is in a different place for you. For me, it is actually, well, it's here. It's coming down behind, so there is a deep shadow here, which looks slightly different. You should see it the same as I do on the photo, though. I think that's more like it. Oh, Studio Cat's woken up. Or he's maybe having a dream. Don't know if you heard that little grumble. Okay, back to light and shadow on the flowers. So, shadow. slight petal here I want to bring out a bit more. Shadow over. Background, cut into the shape. It is a very slow process, the way I paint complicated stuff like this. But I generally find that what happens is you feel like you're kind of going at a glacial pace, and then there comes a point where you stand back and you think, oh, actually, it's almost finished. Once if you're careful enough at the early stages, when you get most of it covered, you can find that quite often that all you need is to add some detail and to clarify what's happening in some parts of the painting, and it will start to hang together. I think my assumptions about the colour, checking with the colour, I think they were pretty good. I think the main thing that's striking me at the moment is value-wise. I'm struggling a bit to make these petals pop as much as they are in the actual painting, so I may have to look at the value relationship, which basically will mean bringing other values that are close to this value down a little to make it come out a bit more. I'm going to try bringing down the value with my dark brush, this shadow in here a little, because it definitely does go lower in the middle. And all I've done is I've taken the darkest colour that I had in my string and I've added a little bit of raw umber to it to bring the value down. Although I've possibly overdone it there, what I'm after is I want the relationship between the light and the shadow, and at the moment my lights are not quite reading light enough for me. So the only thing I can do then is really to bring down the shadow a little. But what I don't want to do is take everything, blanket, and just bring it all down, because then I'll end up with a much darker painting, and that might be equally unsatisfying. bringing up the value of the background here a little bit. I'm just kind of scumbling over a bit of very dry titanium white. Take a second short break and answer a couple of quick questions. Shelley, at some point would you show that little painting at the upper right of the easel? Oh, this one up here? Yeah, it's actually apples. I started that one. It's been on some live streams, that one. Little apples I painted just before Christmas, and I just finished off the background and the stick earlier on this week actually, and I'm going to cut that one down to fit a specific frame. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to sell that one. I have a feeling I'm going to keep that one for myself, because I have a frame that's the right size for it, and let's see, I don't know, it's got a lichen coloured kind of little stick in the background that I really like, and it was sort of an experiment. Yeah, I mean, I'll do a blog post about it before long, probably in the next week or two, so you will see it close up later on. Adrian, oh hiya, that's all right, no problem catching up later. Beginning to end, including auction and packing. Good. I'm glad you think it's a good idea. Hopefully this is going to be, it's going to take a little while to get from this point to right at the end. But that's kind of the point, because I think sometimes when you can look at someone doing something, and if you don't see the detail that goes into it, it looks like it's quite easy. I remember when Dwayne Keyser came out, and I saw a comment that someone wrote on a forum or something about his work, and they said, oh yeah, what he was doing, and they said, oh yeah, how nice to be paid for practicing. And I thought, well, it looks like he's doing a bit more than just that to me. You know, he's handling all of the promotion himself. His paintings he's going back that way now. He went away from it for a while, and he's going back that way to it now. We're very highly finished, very carefully done in a day, but those must have been pretty long days he was putting in on some of those paintings. And I think people kind of got the impression from watching him do it, and maybe if you see someone like Julian, who does paint quite quickly actually, but it's still an awful lot of work to keep that going over a long period of time. People kind of get the impression that you just dash these things off and stick them in the post. It looks great, looks easy, you know, I'll do that, you know, it's what a nice way to make a living. What I'm hoping you get to see through this, although it will take maybe a couple of months to get right to the end of the whole thing, so that all of the information is there for you to see. I'm hoping you'll get you will see what's actually involved at each stage and how it's actually quite a time-consuming thing to do. It's a wonderful thing to do if you can be paid for your painting, picking subjects that you want to paint. But it's far from simple. You know, there's quite a lot involved in it. There's the painting itself, as if that wasn't difficult enough. You know, choosing subjects, you've got to think about that as well. There's a compromise between what you choose to paint, it being something you want to do, and if you want to be paid for it at some point, you need to think about that as well. Where you choose to place yourself on that line is entirely up to you. You know, some people, I've seen people with websites where they put up a painting and they say, tell me what colour your couch is, and I'll do a version of this painting to match. I think most of us probably wouldn't want to do that. You know, doubtless they sell a lot of work that way, you know. But I think probably most of us wouldn't want to do that. But if you completely ignore what people want, I mean, no one who is a professional and makes a living selling their paintings, whether they're online or in a gallery, does it without ever thinking about what buyers out there will like. You have to take that into account to an extent as well. I think I've found my sweet spot pretty much, which is this kind of stuff and the apples I've been painting lately and that kind of thing. Maybe some plein air later. And I think you need to find where that your own sweet spot is between what people will buy and you still feeling engaged enough in what you're doing that it doesn't start to fall apart. You know, sometimes I think you can see when people have got bored with what they're doing. Do you ever do a grisaille underpainting first? Jean, never. Have I ever done it? I have done value paintings underneath. There's a painting I did of a little jug with a red apple, and that's on the blog. It's called Coalport Jug, I think, Apple and Coalport Jug or something like that. Quiet Corner. If you go into Google and you put my name and Quiet Corner, that painting will probably come up. And that one, because I knew the values were going to be difficult, I did really quite a finished underpainting first, but it was all done in raw umber, and it was kind of scumbled on with no terps or anything. It was kind of dry brushed on, almost like drawing with charcoal. And I got all of the drawing and the values established first before I went in with paint, because I knew it was going to be a tricky one. So you could kind of say that was a grisaille, but it wasn't really, because I didn't use any white. I didn't paint any of the highlights. I just left it blank. It was just an underpainting, really. So no, I don't. Especially for this kind of work, unless you can. Direct painting is good because you can get them done more quickly. There is a ceiling to what things will sell for online. I don't know what it is. As I was saying, I think in a stream before, the most I've sold a painting for online is, I think, $1,100, $1,150. Usually they go for substantially less than that. That was a bigger one. But you have to factor in the amount of time they take, because the reality is, if you're going to turn professional, you have to get paid enough to live, you know, so you have to consider those things as well, the practicalities. And grisaille technique is a time-consuming one at the end of the day. Hello, Rosemary. Nice to see you. Kids are busy playing. Thank you. Yeah, my kids are busy playing. They're off, obviously. I've let them have their tablets a little bit longer today, so I can get some peace and quiet. They're not running in here screaming while we're streaming. Let's see. Looking back at this now, I think I'm fairly happy. I'm fairly happy at this point. I'm starting to feel. To me, if I can start to feel some light and shadow, then I'm all right. I'm not bothering about this bit and this bit yet, because they're not going to move. It's these that I need to get in, and I want to get the outlines about right, and I want to get the light and shadow right. If I can get that, then I can sort the rest out. There's quite a bit to do around here. I think probably next maybe I'll put this main primrose in here, and then I'll sort out this edge here. And this snowdrop back here. I don't think these snowdrops are going to be all that important, because I think with these little petals here and that one there and that one there, I've pretty much established them. I don't think they're going to need an awful lot more than that. Sorry, I should have the camera on the painting while I'm doing all that nattering about it. I think these are already, they're starting to work okay. This bit needs resolving. And I want to get the light and shadow in of the main persimmon here, primrose here. And then I think it might be time to start thinking about a break. But the light and the shadow is starting to come. The last bits I'll do will be these bits. I may rough them in. I'll probably try and rough them in today, so I can still get an overall feeling. But with the background and the flowers, I think I'm starting to get a feeling of the shadow and the light. The only thing that's bothering me at the moment is that I can't quite reach the lights of the primroses without losing too much chroma, which is often a problem with very light valued subjects. Because as I was saying before, like those primroses, the lightest parts of them are angled towards the light, and my panel is here. So I can't go quite as light as they do. You can see the difference in value, you know. I think the camera's actually blowing that out a little bit, but you know, you can see the difference in value between those two just from the angle. So this is titanium white, that's the lightest I can get. So if I've got something with a white local colour and it's pointing towards the light, then I can't hit the lights. I've got to compromise. And I'm going to need to feel my way through where the compromise is depending on what the painting needs. But it's starting to get an impression, I think, of light and shade. Yeah, Renee, would you recommend experimenting with painting subjects to find what your audience prefers? Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. If you don't mind doing that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would be basically like you would be doing market research, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I think it's important not to lose sight of what you want to paint as well, because after all, I think there's a point at which this stuff could become like any job, if you allow it to be that. I mean, it is wonderful to be able to make a living out of painting, but there's a balance to be found, like, you know, in almost everything. But definitely try different things. The one thing I will say though is sometimes you just don't know why a painting sells and why another doesn't. I've done ones of flowers, you know, and flowers is usually a fairly popular subject, that just haven't sold, you know. And I thought they came out all right, and I've sold ones that were similar, you know, in treatment and style before, and went all right. And you know, I'm not sure why. So that happens too. Be prepared for that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was having a chat with Julian Merrow-Smith when I was over there to see him last summer, and he knows very well. He's done so many paintings. You're talking about like getting on for almost 3,000 little paintings now. He knows very well what subjects do well. You'll figure that out over time. Okay, so I'm looking at oh, sorry, what's that? Shelley says, I've seen very few grisaille-started paintings that haven't lost freshness, spontaneity. It's a very different kind of painting, and I think I wouldn't judge it for that, because I think it's about something else. I think I would say it's more about very fine finish and painting very carefully, and that's a different thing, but it's not necessarily bad because of that. I mean, spontaneity and freshness is, if you like that in a painting, then it's a good thing to have. But there are other ways to paint. I think one of the things that bothers me is that I think a lot of the time we get hung up on thinking that the way that we paint is painting. And you know, if there's one thing that we should have learned from the last 50 to 100 years of painting, is that there are actually many different approaches. I'm not saying they're all valid, because you know there's a lot of bad work out there. But when you're talking about particular techniques, freshness and spontaneity is an important thing. I think if you like freshness and spontaneity, if you like very carefully controlled work, then that can be a thing too. And I think people who work that way, obviously that's what they're going for. You know, that's what painting is to them, and that's all right. So I think I'm not criticizing you for saying that at all, but I think it's well to bear in mind that freshness and spontaneity may just not be that big of a deal for some painters, you know, and for some it's very important. I would say in general, in terms of the painting that people like online, Impressionism is the most popular form of painting by far. but that's worth bearing in mind. I would say I would call what I do direct painting, but I wouldn't call it impressionist. I'm not sure I'd call it traditional either. I'm not sure what to call it really. It's just what comes out is what comes out, you know. I try to paint things that I think are beautiful, and I try to make beautiful paintings out of them. And I'm not really sure. Sometimes I try to paint more loosely. Yeah, more immediately, if you like, and often doesn't come out very well. Rarely it will, but I generally find the slower I paint, the better the results, and I think it's something to do with your temperament, your personal temperament. I'm a fairly slow and methodical person, so it's no surprise that I tend to do my best work when I work slowly and methodically. I'm really itching to see, you see in the middle of those primroses, there's a little high chroma, slightly darker bit of a more orangey yellow. I'm going to see if I can pop a little bit of that in, because I just want to see how it's going to work. So let me switch over to the palette quickly, show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this in a fairly quick and dirty way. I would definitely be painting faster than this, by the way, if I wasn't yakking at the same time. What I've got here, this yellow I've got, you can hopefully see. Oh, that's a rubbish brush. You can hopefully see is it's more towards orange, towards the orange yellow than the one I had. I think it's probably not that far, but I'm going to go with some fairly pure, just pure tube colour there. I've taken it a bit back towards green with some lemon yellow. I'm just going to dot a little bit in. Middle of this, on the light side. See how it works. Put a little bit over here. What I should do there first is put a slightly darker. Just thought it would be nice just to try this to see if it works. Because then I might, if it really brings out the character of the primroses, I might not worry so much about the value. Yeah, it looks nice. I'm doing it when I go quiet and there's nothing happening on the screen. It means I'm just looking and thinking about what I might want to change. I'm just trying to balance the light and the shadow and get this little indentation in the middle. I am bringing the shadows down more, maybe too much, because I want the lights to show. I really want that. I think it's really important to have that separation between the light and the shadow, and if you don't have it, you end up with a very kind of indistinct form. And especially for flowers, you know, it's really important to have that distinction between the light and the shadow. And because I can't get quite as light as the actual primroses, I'm kind of dancing around the shadows and changing them a little bit to see, bringing them down and then thinking it's too far and then bringing them back up a little bit. I'm happy with the overall colour though. I was wondering, even when I had this greenish yellow on the palette, I was thinking it might be not quite right, but I think it's worked out. It looked too green. Colour can be so tricky sometimes. Our perception of colours. I think I'm going to, let me just try bringing up the exposure of this camera a little bit. I think it might have dropped a little. Light is definitely dropping now. Bit frustrating. That's probably a bit closer to what I'm seeing here. Hopefully you can see what I'm still dealing. I'm starting to put in a little bit of detail into these flowers now, but I'm still dealing almost entirely with just, I'm trying to create form, just light and shadow, have the shapes right. And if I can do a good job of that, then a lot of the work will be done. Talking about spontaneity, I'm hoping that the flowers will look. They have a feel about them that I like at the moment. They're getting form, and they're not very detailed. They kind of have they do have a kind of a spontaneity to them, I think, which I like, and I don't want to lose. So I'm going to do some more on them, but probably not all that much, because I think when I get down onto the tabletop and the vase, that's going to make a big difference. Now that I've worked very slowly. I mean, hopefully that's obvious, you know. But I think I'm beginning to get some form and light, and now I'm starting to loosen up a little bit and look at the kind of the overall. Little notes here and there that I think might help. Let's bring up the value of the background a little bit around this. Oh, here, just a shade. The kids are getting a bit restive next door. Just want that to come out just a little bit. Really bring that feeling of shadow out there. I think it's getting interesting now. It's starting to. It's beginning to come to life a little bit. I was saying earlier on, I want to sort this a little bit out here because it's showing the edge of the primrose on this side. There's some nice dark values here. I can sort out the drawing of these. Very indistinct in terms of the painting, what's happening there, but I want to just use it to sort out the edge of this. This primrose. I think it's coming. I definitely want to bring down the value a little bit of the shadowy parts of the background. Just looking at the overall effect now. The overall feeling of shadow and light. I'm feeling badly that I want to sort this out now so I can see how the whole thing is going to work, because obviously this, when this gets filled in and gets darker, it will make this all stand out a bit more. Probably got enough done here to be able to finish off that. I'm not sure that the primroses are going to need a huge amount more work, because sorry, let me switch back to the other camera. I think with the light and shade coming here, there is a definite feeling of light and form here, which is the difficult thing to get with flowers, and that's beginning to come. I'm going to probably do a little bit more on them, but after I'm going to have a bit of a break, I think, for a little while now. I'm reaching the point where maybe half an hour away from it is going to be a good idea. So I'm probably going to, I think I'm going to probably wrap up for today. This is kind of where I wanted to get to for today, for the stream, is to show you, talk about how I've set this up to begin with, and why I make the decisions that I make about what I'm painting and how I'm painting it, and then show enough of my method of doing it to get enough of it established, so that you can actually see how I'm approaching it. You can see the painting start to come together, and I think I'm kind of there now. I'm feeling that I was just doing the contour of a petal there by establishing some shadow behind it, and I could feel my concentration going as I was doing it, and I kind of have a little rule to myself that that's the point where I need to have a break and make a cup of tea. So I'm not going to do I might do a tiny bit of work without recording, but I won't do very much. I'm going to do a little bit more work on the pansies and resolve this area here, the primroses, sorry, and resolve the area with the snowdrops there. I think the snowdrops are going to be fine, and then I want to do a really nice job, but I'll probably do that tomorrow, of this and this, because I think that I think they're working all right, the flowers. They're not going to need a lot of detail before they get to a point, I think, where they really kind of start to pop out and live. But I want to make sure I've got this in so I can see how that's going to work. I think it's going to work all right, but we'll see. Let me have a quick look. Oh, Renee says, thank you, Paul. I enjoy somewhat of a range of topics, but would have a hard time painting something I don't enjoy in the long run. Yeah, me too. I used to work as a mural painter, and I used to do, this was commercial art, and I used to do murals in motorway service stations and theme pubs a long time ago. And to be honest with you, it killed painting for me for years, for a long time. The money was really good, the work was incredibly hard. I would do 16-hour days, I was a lot younger then. But in the end, it just killed painting for me. I basically put all my energies into music for a number of years and didn't go back to any painting for a long time. You have to find that balance for sure. Rosemary says, apologies if you've already mentioned this, but what pigment are you using for the primroses, and what HVC are you aiming for? Just about to run out of batteries, right? Well, the actual HVCs, if you want to know from my string, I'll need to wipe them off. For anyone who's not familiar with talking about colour that way, HVC is just hue, value and chroma. And if you know the hue of a colour, if you know the value and you know the chroma, that's enough to mix a colour exactly. So it's a very practical way of describing colour. So you could give me the hue, the value and the chroma of a colour, and I could mix it exactly. You wouldn't even have to show me the colour, as long as you got the Munsell book. And it's a really, in painting terms, it's a really useful way to think about colour as you paint. So from the lightest parts of the primroses, it's 2.5 GY, which is a green yellow. The value is 9, and the chroma is 6. So it's very high value. And then right through to the shadow is 10Y, so it's gone slightly more towards orange yellow. The value is 6 and the chroma is 6. So the chroma has stayed fairly high. And you do find that quite a lot with flowers, is that the chroma will stay high in the shadows. Sometimes it will be even higher than the lights if there's light passing through a thin petal and there's reflected light. You will find that quite a bit. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through to catch up. Impressionist painting style is the most popular because it looks easy, and people look for a quick way to get a pleasing effect. That could very well be a part of it. It's not easy. I don't think it is easy at all to do well. I mean, anything is easy to do badly. But I think it's also, there's a lot of romance about it as well. You know, that period in France when people were meeting in cafes and you know, it fits the kind of the modern zeitgeist of rebellion against the establishment and all that kind of stuff. It has a lot of things going for it. It's historical at the same time. It's almost, in a way, I think a lot of Impressionism could be called kitsch, in the same way as people deride Bouguereau and painters like that. It's become that, you know, but people don't see it that way. And yeah, I think that's probably true, that it looks like you can just dash it off. But I think you need to paint quite well to be able to do it well. There's some pretty bad Impressionist paintings by the Impressionists. There's some by Monet in the National Gallery, quite a few in the National Gallery in London, and some of them are just jaw-dropping. I think they're beautiful, you know, and there's a couple more you just think, why is that on a wall? It's appalling, you know. I probably shouldn't say that. But yeah, I guess, yeah, that is true. It looks like it should be easy. I want to see the middles going, and the green bits are on the way. Am I going to do the background? If you mean this here, well, that's the foreground. I'm going to do that. The background, I think, is fine. I don't think I'm going to do any more with it. I may drop the value a bit here. I may change little bits, but it's fine as it is. I find personally, as long as the main subject is painted well, and the background is the right value and chroma, but it's setting off the subject nicely. It doesn't need too much work. Yeah, I agree. Impressionism looks easy, but it's not. Renee, thank you. You said there's a lovely sense of space with the flowers. Thank you. That's what I'm after. I think if you can get that kind of feeling of form and light and shadow, then you get space kind of as a free bonus. You know, it comes into the painting. Please tell you which Monets you think are not so good. I'm trying to think. I can't remember the names of them, but there's a couple there. They're towards the end of his life when his eyesight was starting to go. And I think his technique had become a mannerism rather than something that he was struggling towards. And they just look incredibly lazy. I may be being unkind, and it may be that he was trying very hard, but his eyesight had failed him by that point. But the colour is awful. It doesn't describe anything of the visual field, which is something that he was really, really interested in. It's after the water lily paintings. I think the water lily paintings, a lot of that stuff is really beautiful, and it's after that, and they're just I can't remember the names of them. I'll see if I can dig them out. There's a couple that they've got there that are just, you walk by them and you think, You know, they probably paid millions for them just because they're Monets. You know, at the end of the day, a painting is a painting, whether the painter is famous or not. And if it's a bad painting, it doesn't matter who did it, you know, to me anyway. Yeah, his last ones, I would say, it's probably his last ones. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine how awful that would be to have spent your entire life at something, to have struggled and struggled and struggled, and then to find that you could no longer do it because your eyesight had gone. I mean, mine is going. I didn't used to have to wear glasses at all, and now I do for details. I mean, it's fine still, you know, for the moment, but it comes to us all eventually, I guess. Deeply sad for him because, you know, so much of the strength of his painting rested on the visual impression, you know, and finding ways to translate that onto canvas. And he was a brilliant painter, but yeah, really sad. Anyway, so I'm pretty much, I'm going to come to an end for today. How long have I been on, by the way? I have no idea. I need to look at YouTube to find out. YouTube will tell me. Oh, we're coming up to 2 hours, which is a pretty long time. But I'm fairly satisfied, as I'm saying, that I've got an impression of light in there. There's space in there. There's some form. I think it's probably going to work all right as a painting. We'll see. I want to finish this off really, really well to a really nice. I want these bits, especially the vase here, to really have a physicality about it, because I think that will help the flowers, especially the primroses, to feel a bit more fragile, you know. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. I'll record that, and this together with that will be appearing in the Threads videos in the video library for you to see. And then after that, the next thing that I'll do is once the painting is, I'll photograph it, and I'm going to do an in-depth thing on photographing paintings, but I won't do that at this point, otherwise it will take too long, I think, to get to the end of the whole process. But I'll show you, I will video myself photographing it so you can see what I do and give you some idea of how I process the photo, because that's really important, and how I get it, you know, as accurate as I can to the painting. And then we'll stick up the auction and we'll see what happens. All right. Thanks very much for popping in. This was the first one, obviously, of the Threads workshops. There's going to be an awful lot more to come. And this one may spill over into next month. We'll see what happens for the actual packing up and sending out of the painting. But the workshop ones that I do every second week of the month are going to be very much about painting. So we'll be doing some specific things. Oh, and by the way, if you do have anything that you particularly like to see in these painting sessions, drop me an email or stick it in the Threads Facebook group. And if enough people want it, then certainly that's what I'll do. That's what I'll cover. Okay, thanks a lot, and I'll see you again soon.